Funny stuff actually about this particular video. The thumbnail for this video, Samuel Houde, yeah, this was actually made a year ago on October 23rd in 2018. So I've been wanting to make a video on Houde for a year, but a year ago when I was originally going to make this video, he actually didn't have too many things that I dubbed were too video-worthy about him. I wasn't going to make a scouting report on the guy because I just am not smart enough to do that. But instead, we're talking about Houde today because he is, right now as I'm speaking, the most productive Montreal Canadiens prospect in their system. By that, I mean that he is the one getting the most points. He is the one who is doing the most damage offensively on the ice across all of the Montreal Canadiens prospects in their entire prospect pool. So that in itself is a pretty nice thing to take a look at. And what I'm talking about here is Samuel Houde and his current production with the Chicoutimi Saguenéens in the QMJHL, and I just butchered that. So I'm gonna say Chicoutimi and not talk about the actual team name for the rest of this video. Right now, as I'm currently speaking, Samuel Houde in the QMJHL has 23 points in 15 games played. He is one of the top scorers in the QMJHL. Right now, he is in a tie for 12th in the league in total points with his 23, but in terms of players who are under the age of 20, he is actually over there and he is 9th. He's playing on Chicoutimi, so he is playing with Rafaël Harvey-Pinard, who is a recently drafted Montreal Canadiens player too. He was taken at the end of the 2019 NHL Entry Draft. Houde, by the way, taken in the 5th round of the 2018 draft, is a guy who has really started producing at a much higher rate than he was projected to from the previous few years in the Q. He was drafted 8th overall in the QMJHL entry draft a few years ago, and people always thought that he had a ton of potential, especially for a guy in the Q. But 2 years ago in his draft year, he only had 32 points in 54 games, which wasn't amazing, but still, that's a pretty okay, respectable number for a guy. It's why he got drafted in general, too. Last year, though, 43 points in 64 games is what he finished off with. He finished off with 16 goals in those 64 games. However, today, he's got 23 points in 15 games. He has 10 goals already. So 6 more goals and he ties his career high in QMJHL goals. So he's really starting to get that goal scoring touch back into his game, and that's awesome to see for sure. He hasn't really been known as a goal scorer, but in general, I do think he does have a pretty underrated shot. Houde is a guy who's been playing with Rafaël Harvey-Pinard, and they've been really feeding off of each other a lot, assisting on each other's goals and all that stuff. It's been a pretty nice showcase of skills between the two of them, and obviously as two Canadiens prospects, it's really nice to see that chemistry develop there. Now, at the beginning, I did say that Houde is the most productive Montreal Canadiens prospect in the system, and that is an undisputable fact. Because right now, taking a look at the Montreal Canadiens and their prospects, Houde is the player who has the highest points per game amongst all of them. And in terms of points, it goes Samuel Houde first, Cam Hillis, who is second, Alan McShane, who is third, Rafaël Harvey-Pinard, who is also tied for third, Cole Fonstad, Matthias Norlinder, Jesse Ylonen. So overall, among all the Canadiens prospects, Houde is the one who has the most points. And it's honestly kind of a surprise. I didn't necessarily see Houde jumping up to this big of a start, 1.53 points per game. If you do the math on that, Houde is on pace for 90-ish points, almost 100 points in the QMJHL this year in his Draft Plus 2 year, if everything goes right for Houde and he continues the pace, obviously. So that would be an absolutely huge jump in production, especially from last year, especially from 2 years ago, and his inevitable first year in the QMJHL in his Draft -1. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of Houde. Every time we watch the Chicoutimi games, you can see the playmaking, you can see the vision, you can see the IQ. He does a really good job finding open space for himself and for his teammates, which is why he's generally been labeled as a playmaker throughout his draft career, and so far, he's been finding opportunities to use that underrated shot of his more and more. He's been rushing to the net. Rafaël Harvey-Pinard has been feeding him those passes in front. He's been getting some good one-time opportunities, and he can absolutely load it up and wrist it when he wants to. So overall, Houde's development, in my opinion, it's going in a really good direction. Now, do I see legitimate, guaranteed top 6 potential out of Houde? No, I don't really see that. In fact, I'd be kind of surprised if he made the NHL in the top 6 role, to be honest. But if someday down the line Houde finds himself as a top AHL goal scorer, playmaker machine, and he finds himself as a call-up, a once-in-a-while guy in the lineup with the Montreal Canadiens, maybe slotting in to a second-unit power play and playing in the bottom 6 for the time in his prime, I think that'd be a really good steal, especially as a guy drafted in the 5th round. Another player taken out of Chicoutimi was Charles Houde, who, granted, had a few earlier better years in the QMJHL than Houde did, but eventually we did see the downward development with Houde, and now he is where he is in Laval. So I hope Houde is able to surpass Houde in terms of his overall development, because Houde didn't actually pan out into a player that played in the NHL. Obviously, though, he was a 5th-round pick guy as well, so you can't really expect every 5th-round pick to make the league. But for Houde, he's a 5th-round pick who has a lot of potential, and I'd be willing to see the future for this player with the Habs. Hope you enjoyed this video. Social 99, and bye.